What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you want to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
That's the difference between you and Datta.
That summed it up, really, the ability to work with the people underneath them. Datta never tried to do all the work himself. Even when fighting powerful monsters, he was always issuing commands to his team. For the easier jobs, he barely even lifted a finger, or maybe he was just deliberately being lazy, much of the time, but in terms of encouraging growth among his team, Benimaru called Datta a better commander. With Goemon, if a strong monster reared its ugly head, he'd leap right in front and try to fight it. Rimuru could understand his line of thinking. Goemon was talented, so this would make things faster, but doing that accomplished nothing for the rest of his team. And what if Goemon fell? It'd leave his troop defenseless. Rimuru would be deeply concerned about their chances of surviving the encounter. That was the reasoning behind Benimaru's evaluation, and that's why Rimuru wanted Goemon to learn how to rely on others. Mjolnir was great at handling his people, and Rimuru thought using Mjolnir as an example would help Goemon grow a little.
That's exactly why you need to learn how to trust in your friends more. I'm not saying to throw them recklessly into danger. I'm saying that you need to conserve a little bit of your strength and give them a hand if things get hairy. Everybody knows how strong you are. But that's not enough to lead a unit.
Goemon hung his head, and Rimuru took the opportunity to throw the healing potion at him. The fluid spilled all over his right arm, which visibly regenerated before them.
Goemon, I want you to stay with Mjolnir for a while. You can train Bid and his men if you like, or just chill out and relax for a bit. I doubt Molly needs anyone to guard him in town, so take a moment to reevaluate yourself a little, alright?
Lord Rimuru.
Because, none of us can really do anything by ourselves, okay? I think you learned that with your mistake there. Just think about what you should do next time, and you'll find the answer, okay?
Rimuru smiled at Goemon, took the katana off his belt, and presented it to him. Goemon froze, eyes wide open in surprise.
Take it.
But, my mission.
Look, you got Molly here in one piece, right? I'll be expecting even bigger things from you now. Treat this sword as a mirror into your heart, and use it every night to try looking into yourself.
If Goemon could get over his arrogance and pride, they'd be able to rely on him more than ever.
Yes, sir. Your loyal servant Goemon shall live up to your expectations.
There was fire in his eyes. Goemon always was a goblin of ambition. Giving him a goal to strive for should make the growth process go faster. Rimuru was sure Goemon would live up to every bit of his expectations.
Alright, Molly, you mind taking care of Goemon for me?
I don't mind one bit. I was just about to ask you the very same favor. Bid, we've got Sir Rimuru's permission. I hope you're ready for some training from Goemon.
Looks like he was already welcome on the team. Goemon was now a sort of houseguest of Mjolnir's, free to do whatever he wanted. Once Rimuru left the mansion, he looked at the night sky. The assorted constellations up there were twinkling bright, although none looked like what Rimuru saw on Earth. I wondered about that attacker, though. Was it really Kazakh behind that? I doubted a nobleman on the level of a viscount had the resources to stage an assassination attempt with multiple monsters. And B rankers were one thing, but B+? It'd be impossible to tame one of those guys unless you were some kind of tycoon from a wealthy nation. Wait a second, if you wanted to tame a B+ monster, would money be enough to achieve that?
Understood. Thegus, a summoner rated A-, once summoned a B+ lesser demon. It is not out of the question for someone to tame a basilisk.
Summon magic could do the trick. That'd sure be quicker than carting the monster around on a wagon. But while Shuna's barrier kept external magic from entering town, the highways were wholly unprotected.
Better beef up our security.
Rimuru whispered to himself as he set off. Mjolnir had been gracefully accepted by the residents of Tempest. Rimuru introduced Mjolnir to his administration, and Rigurd relayed word of him to the others, but really, it all went surprisingly smoothly. Looking at the way Mjolnir worked for Rimuru after that, Rimuru could see why nobody was complaining. In no time at all, Mjolnir had a firm grasp of the people and resources he had at hand, delegating duties to both man and monster. Between them and the servants he had brought along, Mjolnir had a full organization set up in no time whatsoever. Capable people are just different like that. As he managed this new company of his, Mjolnir used his connections to send out invitations to VIPs worldwide. Powerful nobility from the inner countries, the wealthier merchants from each key city, the movers and shakers over in the Anglasian capital, that kind of thing. Once the snow melted, the Founders' Festival was going to be even larger in scale than Rimuru had first envisioned. Of course, Mjolnir's organizational skills were also pointed in other directions: the performances for their new theater, the format and rules for their arena battles, the admission fee to the dungeon, along with prices for the items they sold there, inventory and sales approaches for the stalls around the arena site. Rimuru was shocked this was a first for Mjolnir. He seemed completely in his element as he arranged all this. Rimuru introduced Mjolnir to Veldora, too, and Mjolnir agreed to work out the guy's hibachi grill concept with him. I definitely made the right choice. Out of all my crazy ideas, hiring him was probably the smartest one. Without his talents, there was a pretty high chance the whole thing would have crashed and burned. No way I'd ever be this nimble with things. I was lucky to run into this guy, and as I watched him do his magic, I couldn't help but feel exhilarated. Time sure flies sometimes, doesn't it? The whole town was in a festive mood now, the streets alive with energy and enthusiasm. Arena construction was proceeding well. Gobku was proving an excellent foreman, and everything was still on schedule. Mildo, youngest of the three dwarven brothers, was also back from his break and adding his own touches to Rimuru's blueprints. Now there was an aesthetic, even artistic value, to the structure. Mildo was a real artist, indeed, and Rimuru sure wasn't, so this was a huge help. Rimuru was sure it'd be more than enough to wow those jaded nobles. Plus, Mildo's touches even looked like they'd be done in time for the first battle tournament. Mjolnir's staff also had their stalls open, selling to the workers in the area for practice. This was going well, too, generating business at a pretty decent clip. Neither of them anticipated any problems, which was a relief. The dungeon, meanwhile, was in Ramirez's and Veldora's hands. Rimuru wanted to be more involved, but he was rapidly running short of free time. Now the various leaders of the Forest of Jura's monster races were assembling in town to celebrate, or maybe probe into, Rimuru's new title. They had a series of audiences with each contingent scheduled across several days. They wanted to declare their fealty to the Demon Lord in hopes of obtaining protection in return, but if they saw that the Demon Lord didn't have that kind of power, they'd no doubt bare their fangs at once and start rebelling. Under a powerless Demon Lord, there'd be no prosperity, only a straight, downhill road to oblivion, and they knew it. Taking action to avoid such a fate was a matter of course. Until fairly recently, the whole of Jura had been protected under Veldora's absolute, irresistible power. That made the forest an impregnable fortress, but now it was under the rule of a new Demon Lord, a freshly ordained one, whose priorities and policies were still a question mark. That'd unnerve any of the monster leaders, Rimuru was sure. So, here Rimuru was, in the audience chamber they set up, being enshrined on his little platform, in full dress. As a slime, it made Rimuru feel like some kind of table decoration, a conversation piece laid out on a divine altar. Rimuru suggested just putting one of his replications up there, but his team of advisors just smiled and said no. They had a knack for working together against him at times like this. His only guess was that they were using thought communication to talk to each other behind his back. So Rimuru let them do what they wanted with him, and they dolled him up so much that he couldn't even move. They even prepared special slime clothes for this day. It was exhausting. Several outfits, changed daily for him, or maybe even morning, afternoon, and evening. Rimuru stopped paying attention. He wished they'd knock it off, but they kept talking about how Rimuru had to strike a dignified pose, which indicated to him that his slime form didn't look dignified at all. Ah well, everyone participating in this presentation ceremony was dressed like they were members of a military honor guard. Every button was polished, not a wrinkle in sight. The pressure was intense, and in the midst of this oppressive atmosphere, rigor, just as smartly dressed, were dealing with the envoys. I looked down at them, as instructed to do, without saying a word. Me speaking would ruin the effect anyway, so I was glad I didn't have to. Benimaru and Shuna stood guard over Rimuru on both sides. Behind Rimuru was Shion, Soe, and Gabble, in a neat little line. Ranga, as always, was holed up inside Rimuru's shadow. Over to the right was Gabwa and another 100-odd members of Team Kurenai. The other 200 were patrolling the city streets. They were all more powerful than their normal security team, so Rimuru took this measure so they could quickly handle any weirdos who showed up during the event. Shion's team, reborn in plainclothes, meanwhile, was also keeping an eye on the town, ready to address any flare-ups before they got out of control. Diablo and Hakuro, by the way, still weren't back from Farmus. According to Gobta, Ranga, and Gabble, who came home before them. They said they'd wrap everything up before the Founders Festival. Apparently, they were pretty disappointed that they couldn't see Rimuru make his royal debut like this, but they had Yome's own coronation to handle over there. With it, Farmus would be reborn as a new country, and Rimuru was sure they had a million things to do, so he couldn't blame them for missing out. Even Diablo was showing up here only on rare occasions, and Hakuro didn't have access to spatial motion, so Rimuru hadn't seen him at all lately. Rimuru would definitely need to thank them once they're back. Rimuru wasn't the only one suffering right now. It was all so tremendously embarrassing, but he resolved to put up with it and get this stupid, exaggerated, bombastic presentation ceremony over with. What was funny was how each of the monster races reacted to him. Rimuru had nothing to do, so he sat there like the conversation piece he was and looked down at the assorted monsters giving speeches. Generally, the monster reactions were divided into 3 camps: worship, observation, or fear. On the observation side were a few people who openly looked down on Rimuru. The new guys from the other side of the Great Emerald River were particularly notable on this front. But it was no big problem. Show off some of his strength, and they'll acquiesce to him. The monsters who feared him, however, were the real issue. Here, for example, was a contingent of rabbit folk in front of Rimuru right now, a race of demi-humans who were honestly pretty cute, human, basically, but with long, pointy rabbit-like ears.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to Vignesh, Raziel, Luke Devlax, Rimuru the True Demon Lord, Tabio Kageyama, Kampa, Shukran, 172 Rishi, Anshu Mishra, Wabi Abdeli, Project Dreams, Vinxie TV, Jonathan Akar, Nadir Al-Najjar, Chad Vota, and last but not the least, shout out to Bonjin Cozy de Lisa. I'll see you guys in the next video.